Hi everyone, welcome to Flow. My name's Ali Gear and I'm so grateful that you're here. This is really just a quick intro on myofascial release best practices and how to use it to support you in the best way. So I just want to talk a little bit about what myofascial release is and how it can help you in your practice. So myofascial release is using tools on the body, and it can be any type of tool. My preferences for tools could be anything such as balls, myofascial balls, blocks, and then foam rollers, of course. So oftentimes what you'll see in these classes is a mixture of foam rolling, using specific myofascial balls. These are medical grade silicone, which is really made to work with your body. However, anything such as tennis balls could work if you don't have the specific tools. I also really like softer tools. This is a gray center ball from Rad Roller that I really prefer. It's just a gentler approach to the practice, which is kind of the way that I really like to teach myofascial release. So when we're working with tools, I would say the most common mistake is we often use tools that are too hard and too challenging on the body. And so I always am in the frame of less is more when it comes to working with tools. The most important thing when you're working with myofascial release is your breathing. So we always want to find just a very natural flow of breath when we're doing this practice. If you start to notice that you're holding your breath, that you're having a hard time really relaxing into your breath, that's a very good indication that the tool that you're using is too challenging, too much for your system. And so your nervous system is reacting. This really is a nervous system practice. We're bringing the nervous system online when we're using these tools on our body. And so when the nervous system responds in a way that our breath starts to contract or we start to grip or hold tension, it's actually creating more tension in the body. So it's counterintuitive, counterproductive to what we're trying to do here. The biggest essence of the way that I like to teach this practice is we want to become super relaxed, passive, almost lazy into the tools so that it becomes effortless. And so our biggest advocate is our breath. So the biggest rule of thumb when doing this work is always be breathing. Never hold your breath. You should never have pain during this practice, things like sharp shooting discomfort, things that create contraction in the body. So there's a few ways that we can modify the practice to really support and meet our needs. So the first thing is try a softer tool, right? It might be that the tool that you're using is too intense for the area that you're working with. So modify with using a softer tool. This is why this gray ball is squishy and it's really one of my favorite tools. 2 myofascial balls is going to help support dispersing pressure. So for example, if I have one tool on a place in my hip that I know is always quite tender, I'm probably gonna have a hard time relaxing into the tool. Instead, I'm gonna tuck a second ball either above it, below it, to the side of it, to help disperse that pressure. Another option is we are using body weight to bring pressure into the tools. And so a way to modify that is you can use the support of a wall. So taking the element of body weight into the pressure, it helps to kind of alleviate a little bit more of that. So that's a really nice, helpful way to modify sensation if it's becoming a little too much. And then finally, you can also just work around the area. So for example, I'm gonna go back to the hip. If there's a spot in my hip that I know is always quite tender, what I can do is move the ball slightly above it, below it, to the side of it, so that I'm off what I would call a hot spot, and I'm actually working around the area to facilitate a little more ease. So those are kind of like the major rules of thumb when working with this practice. And some other things that I like to always encourage after doing a release exercise. So for example, I roll my feet and then I go about my day. Pause. You roll your feet and see if you can take a moment of mindfulness. That could be stretching your feet. It could be a downward dog. It could be a forward fold. Just take a moment to attune to yourself. Attune to the experience that you're opening after the release exercise. So that could be a static movement, such as just holding a stretch. It could also be a dynamic movement like going for a walk, or maybe you're gonna go to practice a yoga flow, or maybe you're gonna go exercise. So those can be some really helpful things. We always wanna encourage some sort of movement after doing release. It's helpful information and communicating with our brain and nervous system. And just remember that there is a little bit more of a shorter window. So we don't want to just roll our feet, go about our day, and then say, oh, hey, I'm going to go to that yoga class an hour later. It's actually about 8 to 10 minutes that we want to encourage some sort of movement in between the release. So that's a really big helpful tool. And I think that the way that you're going to get the most benefit from this practice is not just using it as a preventative. So for example, say I wake up in the morning and my hip hurts, so I'm gonna roll it out. Great, it's definitely gonna help and it's definitely gonna feel better, right? Oftentimes discomfort that we experience is usually due to stagnation, and myofascial release is a really helpful practice for moving stagnation through the body. Amazing. You are actually gonna get the most benefit from this practice if you do a little bit every day over time. Thinking of it more of as a daily habit, a daily practice, just like brushing your teeth, right? So a little bit of myofascial release every day over time is going to prove to be the biggest benefit in our experience. Yes, continue doing it, when things pop up. However, if you can start to incorporate a little bit every day over time, that's going to be the biggest helpful tool. So I have a bunch of classes on here that I'd like to share. Some of them will be daily habits. Some of them will be more specific to releasing the spine, the hip, the shoulders. Some of the classes here on Flow incorporate all the practices, such as yin yoga. I love using yin yoga with myofascial release. Myofascial flows, right? So moving through a vinyasa practice and incorporating myofascial release, interweaving it throughout the whole practice. I love using myofascial release for relaxation. So for example, if I'm feeling a lot of stress, myofascial release is such an amazing way to attune to the body. Why? Because we're incorporating breath. We're easing into our system and we're breathing into our body, therefore sending information to the brain that we're okay, we're safe, and it's okay to soften and relax. So I love incorporating it into meditation practices, yoga nidra practices, any type of contemplative practice that can be helpful. It's a way to get beyond the physical body. So oftentimes when we do a practice that's more contemplative, such as meditation, sometimes in the beginning of the practice, our body is chatting the most, right? Our mind keeps pulling ourselves out of our practice because we're thinking about our hip hurts or our shoulders hurt or I can't get quite comfortable. So the beautiful part of myofascial release is it guides us into our body in such a unique way so that we can connect with our breath, with the physical sensations that we're experiencing on our body to bring us into a stiller place. So there are so many benefits to this practice, and it's really one of my favorite ways to incorporate the yoga practice in so many different aspects. So I'm so glad you're here, and if you ever have questions about how this can best serve you, please feel free to reach out, connect with me. I also want to hear how it's helping you. I hope this gave you some helpful information on how to get started, how continuing to build your practice and incorporating it into your daily life. Thanks so much.